Thank you, Mr. Chairman and committee. For the record, my name is Jordan Redmond, representing District 3 in Kootenai County. Today I bring before the committee RS 31972C1, the Bible Reading Act. This legislation creates a statewide policy to read sequential passages from the Bible in their classroom without instruction or comment. This legislation satisfies the history and tradition test created by the U.S. Supreme Court to determine the constitutionality of religious expression in government settings. The Idaho Founding Fathers intentionally crafted our state constitution so that the Bible could be read without sectarian instruction or comment in public schools. This legislation requires schools to provide reasonable accommodations to teachers and students with conscious objections. This does not open the door for other religious texts in schools because there's no history or tradition with reading those in Idaho public schools. No criminal or civil penalties are involved. Instead, students, parents, school employees, or the Attorney General can petition the court for injunctive relief when a violation occurs. This bill seeks to cultivate morality and encourage good citizenship. Mr. Chairman, I would ask for permission to bring up Blaine Kanzati with the Idaho Family Policy Center to walk through some of the fine points of the bill, as I do have to run to Health and Welfare for a vote on a bill.
Okay, thank you, Representative. Welcome. If you would, please introduce yourself for the record, and the time will be yours.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Chairman. Mr. Chairman, members of the committee, my name is Blaine Kanzati. I serve as president of the Idaho Family Policy Center, and the sponsor of this RS just did a great job of introducing it all, so I'll just hit some of the other points that I think are worth noting. As he said, this proposed legislation is consistent with the longstanding history and tradition of school-sponsored Bible reading. For nearly 100 years, Idaho school children heard the Bible read at the start of each and every school day. The teachers provided no instruction or interpretation or comment, but this was consistent with the intentions of our state founding fathers, who intentionally crafted the state constitution to allow the practice of school-sponsored Bible reading. In 1925, the state legislature exercised its constitutional prerogative by passing House Bill 69, requiring the Bible to be read by teachers without instruction or comment at the opening of each school day. At the time, this was the mid-1920s, school-sponsored Bible reading was widely understood to be constitutionally permissible. In fact, just 1 year later, in 1926, the Idaho Attorney General, A.H. Connor, issued his legal opinion that school Bible reading is allowed under the Idaho Constitution. And if you look at the little pamphlet that was distributed to all of you earlier, it's on the back page. We include an excerpt from that Attorney General opinion, and we're happy to provide that opinion to you in full if you would like. Now, Idaho's 1925 statute remained in effect with some modifications by the state legislature until the early 1960s, when activist federal courts strayed from the original intent of the founding fathers by removing not only school Bible reading, but also, as we all know, school prayer and other religious expressions in public schools. In the 1963 case, Abington v. Shemp, the U.S. Supreme Court held that school-sponsored Bible reading violated the Establishment Clause of the First Amendment. And in coming to that conclusion, the Supreme Court relied on purpose and effect analysis that was later expanded into the Lemon Test. And I think most of us know what the Lemon Test is. This is the same Lemon Test, by the way, that was used to prohibit state-funded chaplains from opening legislative sessions with prayer, the same Lemon Test that was used to bar student-initiated prayer at football games, and the same Lemon Test that was used to prevent churches from renting school facilities after hours. There's good news. In recent years, we've seen a massive shift in Establishment Clause jurisprudence in the federal courts. In the 2022 Kennedy versus Bremerton School District case, the U.S. Supreme Court abandoned the Lemon Test once and for all. And in its place, the U.S. Supreme Court now uses the History and Tradition Test, which considers whether religious expression in government accords with the historical practices of our nation and the original meaning of the First Amendment. Because of the rich history of school-sponsored Bible reading here in Idaho, And because of the originalist understanding of the First Amendment and those involved in drafting it, supporting school-sponsored Bible reading, and certainly the majority of Americans and states who ratified that amendment and the Constitution also understood the importance of school-sponsored Bible reading, we expect that this legislation would pass constitutional muster under that new history and tradition test that is used by the U.S. Supreme Court. So with all that legal history out of the way, let's briefly walk through the RS itself.
Mr. Gonzalez, I will remind you, and I should have up front, but we do have a 5-minute limitation on
Okay.
presentations, so
Okay.
just plan accordingly, please.
All right. Yep. Do you have a timer going, or do you want to let me know how much time I got left?
Officially, yes.
Okay. There we go. So in section 33-1604A, that's on the first page, you'll notice just the legislative findings outlining the historical basis and the legal rationale for this practice. And I'll be really brief. If you follow me to page 2, the bottom of page 2, Title 33, Section 1604B, that is the policy. This policy, by the way, is greatly modeled on that 1925 law that the state legislature adopted. We've made revisions to it to give greater clarity to school districts. On page 3, section 33-1604C, you'll notice that we've included a provision for conscience protections, and this is vitally important. We don't want to infringe on anyone's First Amendment right to free exercise of their religion, and that's why we provide reasonable accommodations for teachers or students that don't want to participate. And then finally, on the bottom of page 3, section 33-1604D, as the sponsor said, the enforcement mechanism is injunctive relief. So there's no criminal penalties, there's no civil penalties, no one's suing for damages, simply petitioning the court for that injunctive relief. And last thing I'd like to point out, last two things, school Bible reading serves an important educational purpose, and we can get into that more during the full committee hearing if we're able. And then lastly, school Bible reading does not open the door to equal time for reading sacred texts from other religions. State legislatures have the primary authority for shaping school curriculum and educational standards, and there is no need to give equal time to every competing religious, historical, or literary text. And in fact, reading the Quran or reading the Satanic Bible or other religious texts may actually run afoul of the history and tradition test that the U.S. Supreme Court has promulgated, because there is no history and tradition of reading those books either in Idaho schools or in schools nationally. And so with that, Mr. Chair, I'd ask that you guys print this RS, and happy to stand for any questions you have.
Thank you, Mr. Gonzalez. Questions, please, from the committee? Representative Garner.
Chairman Pickett and Mr. Bengotti, have you asked our current Attorney General whether or not he feels like this would pass constitutional muster?
Mr. Gonzalez.
Mr. Chairman and Representative Garner, our understanding is that the Attorney General is not doing public opinions at this time. I believe that's still current policy.
Okay, follow up. Representative Hawkins.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, for a motion.
For a motion would be in order.
I would move that we introduce RS 31972C1.
We have a motion to introduce RS 31972C1. Are there any further motions or discussion? Representative Nelson.
Discussion, please, Mr. Chair.
Absolutely.
I have a contrary view on this. My view, to go back historically a little farther, is this country was settled by people that weren't moving to religion. They were moving away from state-mandated religion. To me, this picks a particular religion's Bible, and I am not for advancing this.
Okay, thank you, Representative Nelson. Representative Clow.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Chairman. Just a comment. I'm going to support the motion, but I have some serious reservations about this, but I want to make sure it gets introduced and allow the public to weigh in. Thank you.
Thank you, Representative. Further questions or discussion? Representative Thias.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I'm going to follow Representative Clow. I'll be really interested in some of the First Amendment questions that will come up. and just, I can't speak for all black people, but history and tradition tests just really make me nervous.
Okay, thank you. Representative Sauter.
Mr. Chair, I have the same concerns. I'll vote to introduce, but I'm withholding any further votes. Thank you.
Thank you, Representative Sauter. Further discussion? Seeing none, the motion is to introduce RS 31972C1. All in favor, say aye. Aye. Any opposed, nay. And would the nays like to be recorded? No? Okay. Motion carries and will be introduced. Thank you.